What's up guys, I'm Newbie Dave and today we're building a giant tree. Let's get started. So take a look at this tree, and this tree, and this tree. Even this mighty spruce over here. Do you see something that all these trees have in common? They're pitiful. They're tiny. They're boring. They're copies of each other. Even the spruce trees, which I think are the tallest trees in the game, maybe jungle trees can be a little bit taller, I don't know. But I mean, look at these things. They're all just giant sticks with a bunch of leaves at the top. They're just the same tree copied and pasted all over the place, and they're kind of boring. I like some variety. I actually really like acacia trees because to me you seem to get the most variety out of these things. But even then it's just kind of a little trunk that's maybe 5 or 6 blocks tall and you got a couple branches coming off of it. Well, I want something big. I want something unique. I want something that just kind of dominates, that draws your attention, that says, wow, look at that cool tree. And that's what I am going to build today. Now I think this is going to be a really good spot for this tree. There's a lot of open space right here, and it's kind of between the barn and my base and the mine over there. And so I think this will be a really good spot for it. And then this is kind of going to be I keep talking about the agriculture district. The barn, from the barn over to the mine and my base is kind of where I want all this agricultural type stuff. And I think having this giant tree right in the middle of all that is really going to look nice. Now before we get started, I'm going to switch my beacon over to jump 2 because to build a tree we don't really need speed. That's not going to benefit us a whole lot. In fact, it actually might make things a little bit harder because we're going to be working up in the branches and on the leaves, and we're going to be just making small movements, and having speed might make us run off the tree. Instead, I think jump, and specifically jump 2, will actually come in handy so we can kind of jump around within the tree while we're working on it and get around a little bit easier. So I'm going to switch my beacon over to jump. Jump boost I feel is underrated, at least it always has been for me. I never took jump boost seriously, and so until I started to play around with it with beacons, and this is actually a lot of fun because you can like jump over fences, and I don't know, I like it. Now for this build, as you can imagine, we're going to be using a lot of wood and a lot of leaves, and I am going to be building a giant oak tree, so I'm going to be mostly using oak. I'm going to throw in a little bit of spruce here and there, not spruce logs, but the planks and stairs. And the reason for that is because when you get oak planks and oak stairs, it's this light color brown that you see on the top of the oak log, not the darker brown that you see with the bark. And so there's a really stark contrast, almost like with the acacia planks and the acacia logs, although not that stark. But it's a very noticeable contrast between the oak logs and the oak planks. Whereas the spruce planks and spruce slabs, they're almost the exact same color as the oak logs, and so they blend in very, very nicely. We're also going to need tons and tons of leaves. If you look at any of these trees, you can see that there are way more leaf blocks than there are trunk. There's more leaves than wood. And so you're going to need probably 3 or 4 times as many leaves as you actually use wood. And so I've got a full shulker box full of oak leaves. I've got a little bit more over here, but I'm also going to throw in some spruce leaves and birch leaves. You can already guess where I'm going with this, to have some variety. You know I like having some variety. I like throwing things in to mix things up, so it's not just all the same block, the same color, the same texture throughout the entire build. And the nice thing about keeping all these in shulker boxes is I can just bring them with me while I'm up in the tree, and that way I don't have to come back down to the ground to get more supplies. Now, I am going to be using oak for the tree, but I'm not actually going to use oak logs. I'm going to take several of these and I'm going to turn them into oak wood. Oak wood almost looks exactly like an oak log, with the difference being that you don't have the rings on the top and bottom. It's just the exact same bark texture all the way around. And I think that's going to look really, really nice for the trunk of this tree. We'll use some of the oak logs up in the tree for the branches, but I'm going to be using these oak wood for the entire trunk. Now I'm going to start with 3 full stacks. It's probably going to take more than this. And like I said, this is a really good spot, I think, to build this tree. Specifically, I'm going to build it kind of right here up against the elevation change, this hill. I think it's going to look really nice to have some of the roots of this tree kind of spilling over the hill. So that's why I'm going to put it right here. I'm also going to move this lightning rod so that it's not right next to this giant tree. I'll put it closer to the barn. The reason I put a lightning rod over here was to keep lightning from striking my barn without putting it directly on the barn, so I'll throw it right over here. Now I'm going to be building this tree in stages, and the first stage is kind of just defining the shape of the trunk. So starting there, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks. And then I'm going to go over 1 and go up another 5 blocks. So 2, 3, 4, 5. It's really fun with jump 2. You can actually place 2 blocks below you before you land on them. And then I'm going to go over 1 more and go up another 5. And so this is the shape that I want for the main trunk of the tree. I don't want to just go straight up like the spruce trees or the jungle trees. Like I said at the beginning, I think that's just kind of boring. I want this tree to look like it's kind of leaning. I want it to have some life to it. So this is the main shape. Now we're going to define the thickness of the tree, and for that I'm just going to start placing some of these oak wood around it until I get kind of the right size, the right shape that I want for the trunk. I think that's going to be good. I think this sort of 3x3 circle shape is going to be a good main definition for this tree. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the main trunk. I'm going to define this shape all the way around and go all the way up with it. You'll notice I'm not trying to be careful about which direction these blocks are facing, because just like with normal oak logs, if you place this thing sideways against another block, it's going to have a sideways texture instead of vertical texture. I don't care. I think it's, again, nice to have some variety in this build. Alright, so I took that exact same shape all the way up to where this thing kind of scoots over 1. And so now I'm going to take that exact same shape and basically scooch it over by 1 block as well. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go all the way up with this shape. And then finally I'm going to do the same thing on this third section. I'm just going to define that same 3x3 circle and take it all the way up. Now you might be wondering why I'm not adding like some knots in the tree or some little divots where there's holes, or like adding some variety to the actual shape. Well, first I just want to get the shape defined. Once I have the shape defined, I can come back afterwards and start making a little bit of variations here or there. But if I try to do that while I'm building it, I think it's going to get kind of messy and I might lose the original shape of the tree that I was originally going for. Alright, so if we hop down and take a look up, here's what we've got so far. So you can see it's that same sort of leaning shape that I originally defined with 1 oak wood on each level, except I just took it out by 3 blocks in each direction and just added some depth to the trunk of this thing. So next I want to work on the roots of this tree, the base of it. I want to add some depth to the base. I want to have it kind of sprawling out. And so this is where I'm going to start to throw in some of the spruce wood that we've got. So let me turn some of this into planks, and I'll turn some of these planks into slabs, and I'm going to start with slabs. I don't think I'm going to need any stairs just yet. So the base of a tree should be thicker than the top of it. Trees tend to narrow as they go up. So I'm going to come in here and just add a little bit more thickness to the bottom of this thing. And then where I want the roots to come out, I'm just going to, I'll do one right here. And we're going to come out like this. Every now and then I'll throw in a slab to just do a sort of a gentle curve downwards and really just kind of come out with this thing. Maybe replace that dirt with some wood like that. And yeah, there's one root. We'll do another one over here. And this one I think I'm going to do kind of a little bit bigger. So maybe I'll have it kind of start up here and then go down a little bit like this. I think I'm even going to sneak a slab right under there. Yeah, that's good. I think I might even kind of have this root split a little bit on the end like that. Yeah, you know, just kind of mix it up, go crazy with it, throw in a lot of variety here and there. You want this thing to look organic and natural. You don't want it to just be the exact same roots all the way around. And I think I'll throw in some more roots over here. I think I'm going to do another big one like this. And then I'll do one more kind of not quite so big root on this side. And then to add a little bit more thickness to this base, I'm just going to kind of go around and fill in some of the gaps here and there. So take a step back, we'll see how this thing is looking so far. I don't want to fill in too much of the space on this side because I want to leave that side open so I keep that leaning effect like I've got over there. Yeah, so far I think this is looking pretty good. So now I'm going to go up the tree a little ways and just add a couple more slabs here and there, and maybe some oak wood coming off the side like this. These aren't necessarily meant to look like branches, it's just, again, to add some variety to the shape of this tree. At this point, I'm going to break out the scaffolding, and what I'm going to do with the scaffolding is kind of come out about here. And I'm going to go way up above this tree because as I'm working on this thing and start to fill it in with leaves, this is how I'm going to get up and down from the tree. Not down, I guess I'll jump down, but this is how I'll get back up. I'll come up here and then I'll just kind of glide down with my elytra, assuming I don't miss what I'm shooting for. Now I'm going to come up to the very top, and I'm actually going to remove some of this wood that I put in here because, like I said with the base, you want the base to be thicker than the top. And so I don't actually want the top of this to be quite as wide as everything below it. Now you may be asking why did I put it there to begin with, and it all comes back to defining that shape that I want for the tree. It was a lot easier to define it all using the same blocks all the way up, using the same shape all the way up, and then come back afterwards and remove some of it. There we go. So we've got a really nice shape going to this tree now. You can see the bottom's a lot thicker. The top is a lot smaller. I think I'm actually going to go up a little bit higher with the top before I start doing the leaves. But I think this is a really, really nice trunk that we've got going. And it was a lot easier to define this shape the way that I did by just starting with the inside, defining the whole thing as kind of one shape, and then just starting to add roots, you know, adding little bits here and there, maybe taking out some pieces here and there. In fact, I might even come in, whoops, I didn't mean to take that piece out. I might remove some of these as well, just until you get a shape that you like. So I'm going to come back up to the top. Like I said, I'm going to come up a little bit higher with this because it was looking a little bit too dinky on the top. And actually, I think I'm going to kind of come back over towards the middle of this thing where I had it at the bottom there. Sort of like the tree kind of leaned one direction and then started to come back the other direction. Yeah, that's looking good. So I think I'm going to call it right there for the trunk, because however big you make the trunk of this thing, the leaves are going to be at least as tall. So that's already a pretty tall tree. There's going to be tons and tons of leaves that we're going to have to put on top of that. Like if you look at any of these, acacia trees are a little bit different. They've got sort of shallow canopies. But you take a look at these oak trees, especially the giant oak trees, the spruce trees, they're mostly leaves. And so we don't want to go too crazy with the trunk of this thing, or else we're really going to make things difficult for us when we get to the leaves. Alright, so speaking of the leaves, it is now time to start working on the top of this, the canopy, the leaf section. And to do that, I'm going to start by putting down a temporary block, just some dirt. The reason for this is before I start adding any leaves, I'm actually going to start adding some logs up here, and I'm going to create some branches. I think adding the branches first will help us define the shape of the canopy, and it's mostly going to be leaves. We're not going to do like an entire thing of all of the branches, but I want to get some branches put in first, and I actually want to define these branches with the logs instead of the wood. So I'm going to come out this way. Maybe I'll go up a little bit like this. And again, you really want to go for a very organic shape to this. And so I'm actually going to have this one branch kind of split in multiple directions and go out in different angles. And don't have all of your branches go up. You might have some of them kind of come down a little bit like this. And the name of the game is organic. You want to make something that looks like it generated naturally. And the reason for this temporary block was to help me remember where I stopped with the trunk and where my branches are starting, so that I don't end up making this thing too tall. Alright, so if we hop down and take a look, this is looking pretty good. I'm not going to go all the way up with the branches just yet because I don't know how high this thing's going to go, but I think that this is a good starting point to help define the shape of the tree, the upper part of the tree. So I think now we can go ahead and start adding some leaves. I'm going to keep the oak logs and the spruce slabs on my inventory hotbar so that as I'm adding leaves, if I feel like there's a good spot for a branch, then I can go ahead and put it in. Now the leaves, in my opinion, they're both kind of the hardest part of this tree and also the easiest. They're easy because you just kind of put them down in any sort of random pattern you want. You don't have to be too particular about it. Just go crazy adding leaves. You're going to need tons and tons of leaves in this tree. But what makes it kind of hard is getting down below these branches to place some leaves can be a little bit tricky. And also you don't want to fill in the entire thing with leaves. You want to leave some gaps here and there so that it feels organic, it feels natural. And that can actually be really hard to do because humans are kind of terrible at randomness. We're bad with coming up with things that aren't patterns. We really like patterns and we like to make things in patterns. And so trying to break from that and do something that's not a pattern is actually really hard sometimes. So I am mostly going to use oak leaves. This is an oak tree, so it should mostly be oak leaves. But every now and then I will throw in some spruce leaves, and every now and then I'll throw in some birch leaves, just to have some of that variety and texture, mix things up, but it should mostly be oak. So what I did here was I built some scaffolding and then went out in both directions to get under the tree. Once we get the bottom of this filled in, the rest of it should be pretty easy. But it's really just getting this bottom section because you don't want a flat bottom. You don't want it all to be at the same level, and getting underneath stuff can be really, really tricky. So far that's looking really good. One thing that you definitely want to avoid is flat edges. Make sure that the side is not flat. This is already pretty flat. I want to go up there and fix that. But right now I'm just focused on the bottom of this tree so I can get a nice sort of base to work with, and then I can start building out. I can start building out and up from that. Now I'm all the way on the side of this thing. You can see I've got a branch way up there. I don't have a branch right here. That's okay. I can still add branches to the sides of this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put a branch that just kind of sticks out right there a little bit. And then I'm going to kind of sneak some leaves in behind that. That's okay. I'm okay with branches just kind of hanging out there. I don't feel like I need everything to be connected to the trunk in this tree, especially if I'm going to end up surrounding it with more leaves. So I've taken a step back to look at my progress. I'm actually really happy with how that's turning out so far. It's a really nice base to it. I kind of like how it's drooping over in this direction. Even though the trunk of the tree was kind of leaning that way, I kind of started to come back up at the top, and I think the leaves so far are really helping define that shape. So I'm really happy with that. So now I'm working right under this canopy that I've started to build, trying to get some more definition to the bottom of this thing. So I think I'm going to stop there with the bottom of the leaves. There's more that I want to do on top of that, but I really like the shape that I've got going here. And I don't want to go too crazy with it because the rows above what I've done so far, they need to start coming out a little bit to create a nice rounded shape like you see with some of these giant oak trees over there. So I don't want the bottom of this thing to be too wide. One thing that I tried to do while working on this was, as I said before, you don't want any flat sides. In addition to not making the bottom flat, I wanted to have some parts like this over here and that part over there that really dip down a lot more than the rest of the tree. I think that adds a really nice shape to it. So next I'm going to go back up my scaffolding, get back up on top of this thing. That bottom part is really kind of the hardest part of this whole thing. And now we can start filling in this whole area up here with extra leaves. And this is where you're just going to go crazy, start mixing leaves up. I did start mixing leaves up before this, but just really go crazy with the leaves up here. You want to fill in this whole area. You can have some gaps, like I'll leave little gaps here or there, but you really want to start filling all this in. And like I was just saying, in a couple places I will start to come out and over some more like this to create a nice rounded shape to this tree. So I'm going to hop down, take a look at this thing. That's looking really, really good. You can see there's areas like right there in the middle where I left it kind of deep inside the tree. I didn't bring the leaves all the way out to the side. In a couple of other places, I've got the leaves sticking out really, really far. So the real trick to this, the secret to making it look nice and organic, I know I've said this a lot, I'm going to keep saying it, lots and lots of variety. Don't just do the same thing for an entire side. Alright, hop down and take another look from this side now. This is looking so good, you guys. I'm really, really happy with how this is turning out. You can see up in the middle there's a big old gap with no leaves in it. That was intentional. I wanted to leave that middle section kind of empty, kind of blank. And hopefully as I start filling in the inside, I won't accidentally fill that in, because I do want to leave kind of a big gap, not a huge hole right in the middle. But I want there to be parts of this that are kind of loose, parts that are kind of dense, and I kind of want to leave that part right there a little bit empty. So I think I've done a pretty good job defining the base of the canopy and now defining the sides of the canopy. If I come back up here, you'll probably notice there's a lot of gaps here in the middle. And what I wanted to do first was define the outside shape. Now that I've got the outside shape defined, I can come back in and start filling in a lot of this area. And this is where it's pretty good to kind of mix up the leaves, maybe even throw in some more logs here and there, because you're not really going to see a whole lot of this on the inside. And I've still got a lot of leaves. I probably use fewer than half the leaves that I've got, but I'm starting to run kind of low on oak leaves. And especially since I'm using some of these darker leaves like spruce and birch, I think putting a lot of these on the inside will make the inside of this tree look a lot darker, and I think it'll add some good definition to the leaves on this tree. This is actually one of those parts in the build where I just have to tell myself to keep going, because I get these big flat areas like this and I'm like, that doesn't look good for a tree. But I'm not done. I'm going to be putting a lot more leaves on top of this. Right now I'm just filling it all in. Alright, so taking a step back again, so everything that you see as leaves has been filled all the way in. There are no more gaps in the middle of the tree that aren't meant to be there. There are still some gaps there, but like I was saying, those are intentional, and I'm going to leave them. Now, the canopy is still kind of small, so I actually want to add a lot more height to the top of that thing. And at this point, it should be pretty easy. We've got the shape of the tree down. I like the shape of the tree. I don't think I need to go out any further in any direction. So I can really just go up a little bit more and then kind of round off the top. And I think we'll have ourselves a really nice giant oak tree. I'm sorry that there's not really a whole lot of dialogue during this stage, but this isn't really a part of the process that requires any sort of explaining. It's just a whole lot of doing, and just how you do it is kind of up to you to make it look like the tree that you want it to be. Now, I will say that, like when I did the base, right now I'm mostly focusing on the outsides, the edges of the tree, so I can really get the shape defined that I want. Every now and then I hop down and take a look at it from the bottom to make sure that it's not getting too tall, but also not staying too flat, and I've got some good definition to the edges. And when I'm happy with the shape, then I go back afterwards and fill in the inside. Because what goes in the inside doesn't matter as much, it's really what's on the outside that is going to define how this tree looks. It's like the exact opposite of life. It's the outside that matters, not what's inside. And just for fun, and also to fill in some of this inside area with logs instead of leaves, I'm just going to go ahead and throw in a couple more branches here to help fill in this inside area. Probably won't show through too much from the ground, but it's a tree. Trees have branches on the inside, so why not? And it saves us some of our leaves, because I am seriously starting to run low on leaves here. Alright, so I'm now at the very top of the tree, so to finish this off, I'm going to kind of do a same sort of pattern or texture as I did for the bottom of the tree. I don't want it to be flat, but I also don't want it to be like, to keep coming up into this big dome. And so I'm really just going to create something that is flat-ish with some pieces sticking up here and there, and also some holes that go down here and there, and just try to make it look random and natural. That's really the name of the game here, is just trying to make everything look natural, organic, add lots of variation. And one really good way to know when you're done with the top of this is when you've run out of leaves, like I have. So let's now hop down and take a look at this thing from the ground. That looks so good. I'm really happy with the height. I really like how the trunk kind of starts by curving over to the right and then sort of comes back. And it seems like the weight of the tree is slightly over to the left. I think that looks really, really good. Now, while working on this, I've mostly been looking at it from that one side, from the side that faces my base. So let me go around and look at it from the other sides. I did end up adding a lot more wood and logs inside the tree, in part to just kind of fill it up with something other than leaves, but also kind of like, as you can see up there near the top, I just wanted some more wood to be visible, sticking out through the leaves to make it look like there's branches and tree inside the leaves up there, and it's not just all filled with leaves. So I really, really like the shape of this thing. Yeah, I am really, really happy with this, you guys. So I did go ahead and add some lighting around the base of this thing. I put some lanterns up in the tree on some of the roots, just kind of around it. And I also kind of hung some up in the tree on a branch up there. And I've got one just kind of at the top of the trunk right up there. I think this is going to look really, really nice when it's lit up at night. In fact, it might also look really good to like get up in the tree and maybe bury some lanterns or some jack-o'-lanterns in the leaves, like where you can't see them, but at night the light would be shining through so it looks like the tree's lit up. That would be really cool. I might play around with that. But I also came in and just put in some rose bushes, some coarse dirt around it so that the ground is kind of broken up. Bone mealed a lot of this grass to get some grass and flowers around it, and I am really happy with the way that this looks. One last little detail I want to add in is I'm going to throw some jack-o'-lanterns around the base of this thing for lighting, but also just because it looks nice. Same thing with melons. Melons make for really good decorations, and so I'm going to throw in a couple melons here or there just because I think it's going to look really good. I think that it will make this thing look very full of life, I guess, to have a lot of different varieties of plants on and around this thing. Now, it would be kind of cool to have some vines that were kind of hanging down a little bit, but unfortunately, vines just keep on growing until they hit a block, and I don't want vines hanging all the way down from the tree to the ground, so I'm not going to do any vines. If you wanted to, you can maybe have some leaves on the side that kind of hang down a little bit lower, but I'm really happy with this. I am very, very happy with how this tree turned out. Now, I still have a lot planned for this agriculture district. We're going to put in some fields. The fields are really going to go up to and around this tree. And I think having this tree right in the middle of all of that, to have this giant sort of old weathered oak tree is going to look really, really nice. So I'm excited for how this whole area is coming together. And that is going to wrap things up for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I had a lot of fun building this tree. It was a lot of work and it was a little bit tedious at times, but it was also fun, and I am really happy with how it turned out. Big shout out to my patron Summer. Thank you so much for your support. If you would like to support me on Patreon, head over to Patreon. There's a link on my About page and you can check out the different support tiers, and I would really appreciate it. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If so, please hit that like button, and while you're down there, feel free to subscribe so you'll get notified of future episodes as they come out. Thanks y'all, and have a great day.